So this webinar, as mentioned, has been based on some work I've been doing over a decade in teaching foundation writing, and primarily at Bunker Hill Community College. The title, Two Ways to Empower Today's Gateway Writing Students, Digital Workflow and Refinements, focuses on just a few areas that I want to sort of mention where I've seen noticeable improvements in reducing complexity for our students and empowering them to improve their writing skills in this way. The quote I chose today is from the journalist and author Adam Gopnik, because it hints at one of the ways I've been able to sort of continue to think about how technology and education work together. And the quote is, we adjust to the technology of our time as much as it adjusts to us. So technology and its use is not a one-way street. In fact, as we become more proficient in its use, its evolution is shaped by our experiences, needs, and wants. You can see that in the automobile industry, where the early automobiles were pretty close to death traps. And over the course of decades, more and more regulations came into place, more and more technology was applied to make them much more reliable, safer, and user-friendly. And that's what the technology has been doing in the background for word processing and the like for the last 30, 40 years. It's been sneaking up on us. So for that, let's get to what I plan to go over today. When I teach my classes, I usually provide a little roadmap at the beginning to talk about what I'm going to do, and I'll do a very quick introduction because I've gone over that already, but I'll go it again. Why we need to reimagine writing pedagogy. Learnings from teaching digital writing over the last decade, taking a different approach, starting from not the book, but from the computer, and looking at ways in which we can begin to exploit some of these interesting applications. And then I want to just focus on three areas, what I call workflow, positioning, and I'll try to demo a few capabilities, new capabilities that students have been using, and that I think you might find quite intriguing. And then basically what's on your mind is some time when we can talk together, or I can answer questions that you might have or issues that you might have with this approach. So I'm a bit of a horse of a different color in terms of academic world. I've always been a satellite in the academic world. I kind of prefer that. I studied English and comparative lit as an undergrad. I have a management degree, an MS. And most of what I've been doing is applying writing in some form or other in a business or professional application. Most of my career in high tech, I've been an editor, a writer, a consultant. I became a product manager and then a program manager. For example, I managed a group in Microsoft Research in Seattle called the Virtual Worlds Group, which today would be called a metaverse group. It was working on the kinds of things that Meta is doing today. And then I've started a couple of companies. I've been involved in a startup that developed the first WYSIWYG web authoring tool, and a COO and a board member. So over the course of these 30 years or so, I've been teaching technical writing, professional writing, and foundation writing, and part-time in all cases at Bunker Hill Community College. So what I really want to think about is I've seen some changes that have been occurring over the last 20 years that have been very important for writing pedagogy, and how ways in which we can start incorporating those into our curriculum. And look at a number of tools that are hiding in plain sight that are available to us today. Most of them are free, that we can use for ourselves and also for our students in ways that can help them begin to develop a more sophisticated mental model of their writing, their approach to writing. it's not like this has been not happening. People have been thinking about this for quite a while. I've read books back into the mid 1990s that looked at the integration of technology and writing and communication, and how it affects both of them. But the one that really kind of stopped me was one that I had been I'd read in 2013, based on some work that had been done over the last few years by the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. And they had amassed a pretty formidable team of academics, artists, business people to assess the state of education in the US. And they came up with 3 goals. Those goals being educate Americans in the knowledge, skills, and understanding they need to thrive in a 21st century democracy, foster a society that is innovative, competitive, and strong, and equip the nation for leadership in an interconnected world. And they said something very interesting at the end. They said, these goals cannot be achieved by science alone, which I thought was really perceptive, because that's something that I knew quite working with a lot of engineers and computer programmers and modelers, and was really that the humanities had a profound effect on how they produce the products that they produce, and it's something that our students can take advantage of. So reading through the report, I was struck upon this particular statement. There is no reason liberal arts education cannot flourish in a new environment using new tools. The future will still need the human skills that liberal arts promote, and perhaps we'll need them more than ever. Skills in communication, interpretation, linking, synthesizing domains of knowledge, and imbuing facts with meaning. I had a few questions when I read this. What new tools were they talking about? What they were really talking about back then were the tools that I had been using in my professional life that had not been fully exercised in the educational environment, and actually enhancements to those tools that were coming down the pike, primarily related to artificial intelligence. And the other thing that I was struck by was these high-level skills. I was spending most of my time in the trenches with working with students on what I called breaking rocks. That is, syntax, organization, an array of composing and management tasks. All of these lower level attributes that go into making the writing work, but at the same time, you have much less time bubbling up to look at these higher order issues like these. And I really wanted to spend a little bit more time here and less time in the trenches, and begin to think about how I could still meet the department outcomes, and also start being able to integrate more of these higher order skills into the process. In the process, how do I elevate student skills to spend more time with these higher level skills and techniques? How do I get them to move up the pyramid to begin to focus on these, and spend less time having to deal with the drudgery of actually kind of putting the words together in ways that that wear them out, as well as the whole aspect of using digital objects and trying to find out where they are and search them, et cetera, and also the inner workings of computers. So that's where I started. My students needed real-time solutions. The ones that were available in the early 2000s and into the mid 2000s, 2000s, were batch tools. But my student, which wouldn't allow them to basically create a 16-week deadline to make their essays. What they needed was something faster. They needed it in real time. And the other thing was that all of the online services tend to offload the responsibility from their shoulders. They send something to something like a smart thinking, and they get a result back, and that's declare victory. They move on to the next thing. What they didn't do was they didn't own the problem of perfecting their work. they were expecting that some service would be available for them out there on the internet and that they could use that at all times. I wanted them to own the improvement in their writing. And to do that, I needed to find a way to get them to begin to use some of the tools that I had been using and some of the tools that were coming into the market. So that's where the general flow of what I'm going to be talking about sort of comes from, the context. A few short years later, in 2019, by then I had introduced students to a few tools with seemingly magical properties that they were adoring and adopting and feeling like they were very helpful. Microsoft and Google had introduced refinement tools, primitive writing support, and predictive text had appeared in email applications at Google for Google at first. And so John Seabrook wrote an interesting article called "The Next Word" in the New Yorker in 2019. He wanted to talk about predictive text, and here's what I thought was most astounding when I read his article. He's talking about writing an email to his son. Finally, I crossed the Rubicon. The sentence itself was a pedestrian affair. Typing an email to my son, I began, "I am P," and was about to write "pleased," when predictive text suggested, "proud of you." I am proud of you. Wow. I don't say that enough. And clearly Smart Compose thinks that it's what most fathers in my state to their sons say to their sons in emails. I hit the tab, no biggie. And yet, sitting there at the keyboard, I could feel the uncanny valley prickling my neck. It wasn't that Smart Compose had guessed correctly at where my thoughts were headed. In fact, it hadn't. The creepy thing was that the machine was more thoughtful than I was. For me, John had discovered a new inflection point in the advance of computer-assisted language. So in the course of reimagining how we write pedagogy, what he was really looking at was what we had done with typewriters. Computers aren't typewriters. They never were typewriters, but they emulated typewriters. They acted like typewriters. And they're no longer word processors either. What they have become are writing collaborators. And collaborators have human characteristics. They suggest changes, they enhance, they teach, and they argue. And what we're seeing today with the introduction of a lot of artificial intelligence and machine learning is that these tools are beginning to provide us with a collaborative framework in which our students can take advantage of and exploit for their benefits. It's not all roses, though, and I'm sure you know that computers are frustrating, hard to learn, change frequently, sometimes unexpectedly, costly to maintain and connect to others. All of these issues are still plaguing the computer industry, and yet a lot of them have become less serious in years past. And there are solutions for most of these today that can help us mitigate some of the frustrations there. Especially because now they can give us access to a whole set of new tools that are powerful and usable by our students. These AI refinement tools are based on widespread use. So there's a whole many decades now, and also many users who have used these tools and have perfected them in ways and began to teach them how to perform in a more effective way. And there's networks of friends, experts, information analysis tools, models. All of these can help improve our writing. So what do we do? Well, we all need to gain more experience writing in a digital world. We all need to basically start our projects in the digital world and end our projects in the digital world today. And from that perspective, the concept of a printed paper document is not quite as accurate as it used to be in how we envision this framework that we're using to develop these digital objects. I also need to sort of take a critical stance to skillfully exploit this technology. And it's not, we need to instill that skepticism in our students. These tools can be very powerful. They can swamp a fledgling author's style. And what we need to do is to really be able to teach them how to use these tools in a way that's going to help them improve their voice, make it more precise, make it more effective. And most importantly, we need to provide context. How do these things work? How can they help you? How can you avoid mistakes using these tools? How do you control them? Have patience, because learning curves are still pretty high. And then finally, empathy. Work with our students who are having trouble to find solutions for them. Many of our institutions today have really robust help services that can help, tutors who can help, and we need to be able to help those students through the process. Now, I don't expect all of your students are going to find these tools usable. It's still, there are a variety of different learning experiences out there. And what you need to do is to not punish them for not adopting these skills. You need to treat them with respect and dignity and order that you can, and provide them with the services that they need to improve their writing. Occasionally, one or two will catch on, and they'll begin to start with spell checking and work up to some grammar checking tools. But we need to spend more time in thinking about the digital world as a universe of its own in a virtual space. So the three areas that I want to focus on today, just sort of give you a sense of some things you can do, are what I call workflow, how to work with objects. It's different than working with a piece of paper, and it's different than working with a flat file. You really need to begin to think about how you move this through a process in a way that's going to improve the end product, perfect the end product. How to position these tools? How do we think about them? What are the ethical problems associated with these tools? What are ways in which we can exploit these tools to produce a more effective essay, a more effective turn of phrase? And then finally, a peek at a few emergent capabilities, some tools that I've found students using today, and some tools that I've mentioned to my students that they should be using, and some of them I've actually integrated into my curriculum. So, workflow. Well, workflow is a pretty simple concept, and I'm sure you all are aware of it. A process has three components: an inputs, outputs, and a feedback loop. All processes do that. Sometimes the feedback loop is missing, but it shouldn't be. And most of the time, we go through this process based on the editorial processes of the 16th, 17th, and 18th centuries, following a manuscript through to production. But the digital world is a little different, and particularly in this area of workflow. These are the stages or phases of work to accomplish the process. There are ways in which we can insert various components of technology along the way that can help make the outputs more effective, and that can be reinforced with the feedback loop. So if we start thinking in those terms, we can find ways to integrate these sorts of tools into a workflow process for our students more effectively. We all have experiences with digital workflow today. Here's an example of a digital workflow for a parent's permission slip workflow for a field trip. And you can see that it just follows in a single threaded linear way from the creation of a template to an email to parents. Parent signs and digitally signs it, it goes to an administrator, and then it ends up in a database, which is essentially a storage unit where our students could be storing their products as well, a database. So workflow is a series of defined and repeatable activities to accomplish a goal and to set to a set of procedural rules or protocols. Every organization has its own set of workflows for everyday tasks. We swim in these workflows. Many instructors and managers have defined workflows. Some instructors have workflows, but they're not quite defined for the students as explicitly as they could be. And students find themselves in a netherland of trying to figure out what they should be doing, what the next step should be. I'm a proponent of being as specific as possible to help define workflows. So we can create conventions to follow rules and stick to them. For editorial workflows, create directories, name files and versions with version indicators, apply strategies, what we call heuristics, and repeatable activities called algorithms. All of these can be integrated into a workflow that we create. I talk about naming files with version indicators because version control is a problem that our students have all the time. They have difficulty finding previous versions, and they have difficulty tracking their versions in ways that they can use to perfect their final products. All of these are speed bumps. So a simple thing, just simply managing your drafts. What I give to my students today are a set of empty class directories, and I ask them to use that under a simple directory for the name of the course, and I ask them to fill in the class information for each directory, each class that we have. It turns out that it's very helpful, and it's just a simple type of thing that they can use, and I've had students tell me that they now use it in all of their classes. Who knew? I have them name their files in a particular way. And I particularly ask them to name them with numbers so they can identify versions that they have, so they can go back to various versions to check things along the way. None of that is something that they had most students don't know how to do. So directories are folders, files are work objects, strategies and repeatable activities include setting up an information system for my classes, save the files for each class in a course directory. Before you start a course, create directories for the number of classes you have and offer those directories to your students. And they begin to build a mental map of, oh, this I can use for all kinds of other digital activities that I have to work on. And many of them will find uses for these in other classes. So that's just one simple thing and something often forgotten. Another one, a little bit more important, is helping them build an integrated writing environment for their own use. So I use the model of the image of a writing desk with all sorts of drawers and various places to hide stuff away and a surface to work on. And from a virtual perspective, that sort of works for me. The thing is that you can create a personalized version of Word and Google Docs in a way that will be tuned to what the person needs to do to accomplish the job that they need to do it. And helping them kind of create their own version, their own personalized version of Word or Docs is a really good thing, because they then own it and they can begin to use it and evolve it on their own after they leave my class. There are utilities and applications that you could make them aware of that they can download and put on their desktop, or make as favorites in their browsers, so that they don't have to go hunting and pecking and searching for these things for forever. Web services that bookmark as many as possible, and analytical services where they can cut and paste their text and put it into one of these analytical tools, and it'll provide them with some feedback in terms of what they're writing. All of these things are available today for them. They're mostly all free, and they help improve their writing. There are some routine processes and templates that they need to kind of use to build some skills in, and templates that they might be using for certain types of projects that they work on, templates that they need to find out on the net that they can use. These reusable components and shortcuts, and sure, there are a lot of workarounds for some of these products. Some of them don't work as well as they should. Some of them have faulty user experiences, but there are workarounds to make them productive, use them productively. And some of those things are just part of living in your life in a 21st century digital world. Celebrate exploration. When a student has a particular thing that they've found, talk about it with the class and talk about what this thing does and how it works, and get them to start thinking about language and operations that you can do on language in a way that can improve the meaning of what you're trying to get across more and make it more effectively. And with our support, students can create their own environments for cranking out quality essays, reports, emails, and other written forms. By them owning their own development environment for writing, they're more likely to continue using it and evolving it for all of their work after they leave class. And I found that the ability to build some tools that can live with them over a longer period of time helps them in the long run with their writing. So now I'll turn to positioning, how to think about digital writing tools. Well, a lot of the AI advances can be quite creepy and quite scary, and can cause all sorts of people to have doubts about, is this ethical? First of all, formal writing has many grammar and style rules that can be automated. The essay has been around since Lamartine, and 16th century. It has evolved over time. There's gone in zigs and zags, but the primary function of what it is and how it's assembled, and you can create an excellent essay based on several structures that exist today that are well known and well respected by not only in the academic world, but in the professional world. And these can be automated. Computers are really good at automating stuff. They're not so good at understanding meaning, but they're really good at automating. Usage data can highlight common mistakes and patterns. So some of these new tools get to know you as a writer and get to know your foibles, get to know your redundancies, and get to know ways in which they can help you, specifically you, notice some things in your writing that you might want to enhance. So computers can learn how we write and predict alternatives that might improve your writing. Now, I say might because what you want are students to learn how to discern the usefulness of these tools and when to apply them and when not. They can improve beyond spelling and grammar fixes. Word, Google Docs, Grammarly, and others have integrated these powerful tools into their editors. And the fact of the matter is, they will continue to improve and become increasingly more helpful. Over the last 5 years, Microsoft has integrated in 100+ rules into their back end of Word today, and you have to turn it on. I'll show you that in a few minutes. And they keep adding new ones, and they keep evolving the ones that they've already got and making them more precise. So what can we do as writing instructors? We can position these technical advances for our students, identify the benefits and drawbacks, discuss ethical concerns and appropriate use, and suggest ways to apply these tools. How do they integrate them into their workflow to better support their writing products? Okay, so a sensible perspective on positioning. Callum Chance has been working in AI for decades, and I found this statement from him that I think aptly kind of is a good way to approach these tools. The more AI can take the low-level composing off the shoulders of journalists and writers, the better. But I don't think that AI will replace human creativity. And I think that's true. It actually enhances creativity in that it gives our students and us the opportunity to elevate up some of those higher order issues that we were talking about, imbuing meaning into ways in which we can model ways in which we can present that information in a more effective way to our reader and enhance the final product. Okay, so very quickly, I want to go over just a few tools, and this is where I'll shut off my screen sharing and I'll open up a couple of screens. But I want to give you a few tools that I find my students might enjoy, and they are a thesis generator, words-free refinement tools, and finally a product called Quillbot and its paraphraser. And why do I think these tools are important? Because it's not so much the individual tools, it's the fact that it turns on our students to a lot of interesting ways to approach writing that they hadn't thought of before. Every semester, I give my students a survey at the end, and I ask them, have you been able to produce higher quality essays? And when I first gave it 7 years ago, I was really gobsmacked by the fact that it came back so positive. And I kept giving it for a few more years thereafter. I've been giving it for about 5 years. And they're all like this. And I don't get anything that has over 95% of my students found that this approach improved their writing, when in fact, it does. They feel more confident. They feel more effective. They find themselves more peaceful and more subdued in terms of how they approach a writing project. It's the basis for the Kendall Hunt's writing guide, Writing in Our Digital World, which I've pulled together over the last 7 or 8 years, and Kendall's published. And I strongly recommend downloading it, looking at it. You may find some use, and your students may find some use. So let's take a look at a thesis generator. Well, what can it teach us? Well, why do we need one? Well, essays have a well-defined structure, which we've just gone over. A thesis statement provides all the main elements of your essay. Once you've identified all the main elements, you can string them together in a sentence using the rules of grammar. So you've got an aspect of an organizational sense of organizational roadmap for what you're doing. You know what the elements are that you're going to have in this essay, and you can string them together in a sentence. And these advanced tools are good for shaping your thesis, but you need to create your final statement so your essay works for you. So the point is, these are modeling tools that students can use. And I'm going to try to bring one up right now. So I'm going to stop screen sharing, I hope, and share out something else. So I hope you can all see this. This is a tool that there's a number of them out there. They've been around for about 7 or 8 years. They were pretty bare bones early on, but this is one that Sunny Empire State College is using that I find compelling. It has 3 different sort of ways of using it for persuasive research thesis or compare and contrast statement. And I'm going to just go into this and tell you a little bit about how I use this. So I give the students a reading. It's an essay by Nicholas Kristof. Back in 2010, he wrote an essay in the LA Times about supporting legalization of marijuana. And what I do is I have them read the essay, and we go through the essay together, and then I show them this thesis generator, and I go through and I just fill in forms. So I'm going to go through it just like I do now, based on what I have read. Marijuana, we should legalize marijuana is the topic. It squanders billions of dollars. It worsens poverty. And I've just gone down through the essay and ticked this all off previously. It creates crime and empowers gangs. And what's the main argument against your opinions? It's a gateway drug. Okay, and what's a possible title? Well, I use the title of the essay, and the War on Marijuana, and I submit it. Okay, so here's what we have. First, a disclaimer. It is your responsibility to revise and refine the thesis statement. And I can go on and on about that, but it's basically telling you, hey, you know, this is just a guide. The basic thesis statement: we should legalize marijuana. The thesis statement with reasons. Notice that the first one is called a claim. We should legalize marijuana because it squanders billions of dollars, it worsens poverty, and it creates crime and empowers gangs. You know, just basically pull this information together in a statement. A thesis statement with cause and effects. And then finally, a thesis statement with concessions and reasons. Although some might argue that the reason, and shows you the model that we use for this kind of a statement. Although some might argue that marijuana is a gateway drug, the reason we should legalize marijuana is because it squanders billions of dollars, worsens poverty, and it creates crime and empowers gangs. So as you can see, this does a pretty darn good job of summarizing summarizing the article that we had just read. But it also shows you how you can effectively use a tool like this to model your own type of essay. Okay, stop here. The next one I want to show you is, go to the next thing here just quickly, is Microsoft's free grammar and refinements rules. As of April 2022, there are about 130 of these rules and refinements that have been built into Word. There's one for grammar, one for conciseness, one's for formality, one for inclusiveness, one for punctuation conventions, one for resumes, one for sensitive geopolitical references. It's a global company, so they're thinking about that. One's for vocabulary. And so to give you a quick look at that, I'll stop the share and try to share this out again. What I like about this is it allows you to have some visibility into, oh, do I have it here? Yeah, I do. Have some visibility into this. And as you can see, you can allow students to download this. You can download it yourself. You can look at these, and you can see that when it talks about a various issue, it gives you the guidance, it gives you the explanation, it gives you examples, and it gives you suggested revisions. That way, the student begins to understand, oh, I've got an issue, you know, I need some guidance. What's an example? And what's a way to revise this? They begin to build a repeatable kind of process to follow to basically deal with issues related to their quality of writing. Okay, so that is that. Let's go back to the slides here. The next one is a bit more, creepy, as John Seabrook noted. It's called Quillbot. Quillbot is a paraphrasing tool. These tools use, and there's a number of them out there today. They're actually, Grammarly has them too, to help understand and restate text. And the caution that I have is that they can lead you in the wrong direction. They're getting better and better every day, and they're quite uncanny now, but they will be quite an important part of our students' future in their writing. Use them to accelerate how to paraphrase or summarize text, and then finally use them to model or shape your paraphrasing or summarizing. In other words, how do you imbue their results with your voice in ways that will be effective for you? And I'll bring that up right now. Share screen. Okay. So here is a student essay that a student gave me permission to use. And I want to show you a couple of things before I show Quillbot. The first thing that's important is that you can see that I've got a quick access set of features here. I don't use the whole ribbon of Word anymore. I've just basically taken all of the things that I use a lot, put them here. And when I have to go back to the ribbon, I go to the ribbon. So for the most part, I've kind of turbocharged my word a bit personally, and I would recommend you do that as well. In any case, as you can see, it gives you an editorial score. This is still Word that I'm using here, and this is saying that the score is roughly 84%, and that's for formal writing. I can change this to professional writing. I can change this to casual writing. And as you can see, it changes accordingly. And it gives you a whole set of issues that it comes up with, and you can walk down each of these and you can correct them. And I have taught my students to basically adopt this in their second essay, in their second version of their essay draft, and then from that point use it to refine their essay going forward. And they use it, and and it shows definite effects in quality of their writing. But in any case, we're here to look at Quillbot. And so here, what I've done is I'm going to bring it up here, and it's integrated. You can integrate it right into Word. It's an add-on. You highlight a phrase. Even playing basketball against kids who were well into puberty and had the advantage of standing a foot taller than I refused to take a loss. So I'm gonna do this. Copy it. It puts it right into Quillbot, their paraphraser. They have a couple of other tools as well. And I'm going to say paraphrase. And let's take a look at what they changed it to. I wouldn't accept defeat. And even when playing basketball against youngsters who were well into puberty and had the advantage of standing a foot taller than me. That's pretty good. Let's try another one. I wouldn't concede defeat, even when playing basketball with young people who were already in their teens and had the advantage of being a foot taller than me. As you can see, you can use this tool to shape your own language, and you can use this tool to shape someone else's language as well. And it's relatively creepily clear in terms of what they have done with this product, in ways of using an AI backend to find ways in which they can use patterns that could more effectively present the information that you're trying to say to your audience, to your readership. Okay. That's it for the basic class session here. What I'd like to ask you, if you have questions that you'd like me to talk about or to run by me, I'd be glad to discuss them. I want to thank you again for all coming. I'll turn it over to Megan. And Megan, is there anything we should, and Linnell, anything we should do now? Any comments coming in?
Well, just before we turn to questions real quick, I just kind of want to reiterate the fact that you have a wonderful publication out that kind of takes everything that you've talked about and summarizes it really nicely. It's available through Kendall Hunt Publishing. The title is Writing in Our Digital World, a Writing Guide for a New Era. So if you guys are interested in sort of the concepts that Ed presented today, that is something that we can provide more information about too. But I think kind of the first question, and I think you're going to sort of chuckle when I pose this one, because I think you get it a lot, Ed, is, well, all of these AI tools, isn't that cheating?
Yes, I get that. Yes, I get that a lot. And it depends on how you look at it. It really depends on whether you're using it as a tool to model your writing and improve your writing, or whether you're using it as a tool to simulate someone's writing in some way. The ethical issues are going to continue to remain omnipresent with these tools. The point is that students, just like teaching the rules of plagiarism to students, we need to teach them the rules of application of AI technology in support of their writing. It's always going to be an issue. And it's always going to have a sort of a slight ethical tinge to it. The point is that who do we want do we want our students to use these tools in abandon, not have any understanding of how to apply them effectively, or do we want them to just use these things haphazardly and kind of stumble through it, or end up getting themselves into trouble by saying and writing things that are not are not part of their voice, and it's pretty easy to show. I mean, the students that I have, by the time they get to after their first paper, and I'm sure everyone else is experiencing this, you know them by their words and how they write, and you know what they're capable of doing and what is going to be a simulation of what they do. And I think that's part of the teaching process, is learning that as well for us. I mean, it's not just a matter of what our students learn, it's a matter of what we learn along the way in terms of how to deal with these types of applications. They're not going to go away. They're going to get better and better. And sure, there are going to be things that are generated completely by computers. There's a whole set of visual tools today, visual AI tools. DALL-E is one of them, where you type in a phrase, a sentence, and it creates a picture for you. And some of them are pretty nice. In fact, one of them just recently won an art contest award. So those things are going to be out there as well for the visual artists. What do we have for the writing artists? We have a set of these tools that can help them evolve and enhance their writing. There was an interesting book published in 2016 by Matthew Kirkenbaum, and it's called Track Changes, a literary review of writing. And he goes back and looks from the late 70s to the late 90s, before AI started showing up, actually, what sorts of things were being done, what authors were using what kinds of word processing tools back in the 80s and 90s. And, there's a whole set of people. John Updike, for example, was using word processors early on to massage and correct his writing. One researcher realized that the real issue is around what they call sense of text. Do you develop a sense of text with these tools that can help you understand where you want to apply them? And that's the sort of thing that will take time for all of us to acquire, and certainly for our students to acquire as well. But I think the writing instructors are really the right place in which this type of information should be made available to them, in terms of the mental model that the students should develop should probably be something that we begin to shape for them. Hope that answers that question.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know I used to be a writing tutor back in college, and sometimes there are what all these AI tools remind me of is the fact that you don't know something until you know it. And so I would sometimes be working with a student, and they would be really, really stuck on a phrase. Just they knew they needed to rephrase it. They just weren't sure how. And I'd put forth a couple of possibilities, and then like the light bulb went on, and it was like, oh, well now, and then you can take that structure and you can replicate it elsewhere. Mm-hmm. So once you know kind of the tools and the mechanics, and so that with the Quillbot, I could see that happening a lot. You see examples of like, oh, here's a way that I could rephrase kind of a clumsy sentence like that. And then you can take that knowledge and apply it elsewhere into future scenarios.
So, yeah, so for example, now I might say to a student, I highlight a sentence and I say to them, well, I've introduced Quillbot. Why don't you try Quillbot and see if you can find ways to rephrase this? You're absolutely right. Eventually, they won't need Quillbot anymore. Mm-hmm. What they'll be using it as a learning, a way to scaffold their writing skills. And that's where I think it's extremely helpful. I mean, when I show Quillbot to students, it's like I've introduced fire to them. It's like, oh my God, where have you been all my life? And it takes a little bit of the tension off of their writing, and gives them more confidence that I can do this. I can use this tool to help me, and it's something.
It's almost like these tools are like calculators. You still need to know how to do the math behind it, but it can help you sometimes with some of those bigger problems.
Absolutely. It's also like GPS and maps. It's I studied sailing in Seattle and in Boston, and we were told we could not use GPSs, and we didn't for our instruction. But once we got into trouble, we all turned on our GPSs.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a little curious with because obviously this is an area where you are tremendously researched, and you continue to kind of look at what is on the horizon as far as digital tools go. What have you found has been your students' favorite tool to use?
Well, because I use Microsoft Word in my classes, and I use it for a couple of reasons. One is that it really is, it has the most features. It has a lot of problems. I know that. I've worked with the Microsoft team. But it has a lot of features, and you can hide a lot of them now so that it doesn't, it's not so bad. But the same paradigm is in all of the word processing tools. Essentially, Google Docs is a clone. Apple cloned it as well. And many of the other editors out there use aspects of Word. Inevitably, you can do things with Word that you can't do with the other tools. Once they started integrating the AI components into it, and I teach the students how to simplify the use of the product, they run with it. And I've done the same thing with Google Docs, but it's more effective with Microsoft's, the way they have integrated the AI into it, where you can actually go in and look at the rules. It's more pedagogically interesting because you can teach students to go, hey, if you don't know what this means, you should just open up this document and, and check it out and see if it's something that you can understand. So from that perspective, it's actually been Word that they tend to find out. And the track changes aspect of it is also pretty nice, because you're actually having a virtual conversation with the student. Since most of the classes that I've been teaching lately have been remote, you don't actually get to know the students, but you get to know their writing really well. And then you get to know them personally in the comment section. You get to know, you have a virtual conversation with them. You can share little points of view about, some rule that you think that you've seen in life that may apply. They can do the same thing. And you end up becoming a kind of a avatar, and they're an avatar, and you're communicating with one another kind of like in a metaverse. But it's all related to a document you're working on together. And what you mentioned, Megan, was actually you were collaborating with those students when you gave them examples. And when you're not there anymore, they don't have anything, and they need collaborators as much as possible. And so these tools are really going to replace, or not replace, but stand instead of us moving forward. And I think it's incumbent upon us to basically, develop a working relationship with these tools that they can use in a way that they have the benefits and drawbacks to them, and they can understand, they can be skeptical about when to apply them. It's certainly at our doorstep today.
Mm-hmm. I love how you kind of stress that skepticism element, because that I think kind of acts as a protectant against, like you're mentioning, kind of just blind application of, oh, well, if it works in this case, it works in this case. But no, I love how you're very careful to say, be careful, because it might not work out the way you anticipated.
Yeah. It's sort of funny. The research that I've been doing in terms of technology and writing, it goes really way far back. Like Friedrich Nietzsche was using. He was going blind, and he had this precursor to a typewriter, and it's a ball. It looks like a cush ball with a bunch of pins on it, and he was learning how to type out his drafts that way. And he had made an observation that was pretty interesting. He said, this technology understands our thoughts. And of course, it didn't really understand our thoughts back then, or it affects our thoughts. And he was right about that. It does, technology does affect our thinking. And writing is really an expression of our thinking, right? So now it's getting very close to being a good collaborator for us, which I think is I think it would be not right to have our students avoid these tools. Basically castigate them or marginalize them in any way, because they're entering a competitive environment in their lives where written communication is one of the keys to, as I say, to moving up a successful career and actually affecting how we think. And they can find value in these tools where others might not. And from my experience is that they do find value in these tools. And they improve their writing. And at the end of my semesters, they're more confident than they were coming in, for sure. And their writing hangs together more effectively than it had been before. And I can spend more time talking about logic and evidence support, and how you structure a logical argument in a way that can be more effective than I have had in the past. It's just liberated me from that perspective. Higher order issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because fundamentally, like, what you're trying to do is you're crafting communication, you're crafting thought. And so the fact that you are able to now really put your attention there, I think is kind of like that wins the day.
Mm. The other interesting thing it does is it gives them a distance between their writing and themselves, in a way where they can look more objectively at it. And they can step back and say, oh, this might sound a little, maybe I'm using too many pretentious words here.
Sure.
Word is saying, hey, why don't you use this simpler word? And I'm using a big word, and maybe I need to use a simpler word here. I don't need to be, I don't need to be cool. I want to get the point across.